right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. If this is your first time joining us, huge welcome, and you picked a good day to start. So we bring science, exploration, adventure, and conservation live into classrooms across North America and beyond. Now that the school year is in full swing, we are broadcasting 30, 40, even 50 live events a month for classrooms and, of course, families at home to join in live too. So head over to exploringbytheseat.com where you can find all the details about upcoming events and register for some camera spots. So we are heading back out into the field. We're going to join the Lucky Peak Research Station run by the Boise State University's Intermountain Bird Observatory. So this is located in Idaho, and we had an event there a couple days ago where we were catching raptors, birds of prey, and banding them along their migratory routes. It was an absolute blast. Today, we're going to learn all about the migratory songbird banding research program. We're going to join Leah Rudge live on the ground. She's a crew leader at the Lucky Peak Research Station. So let's bring her in live with us. Good morning, Leah. How you doing?
Good morning. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Things are going well here. It's a beautiful day. I can hear birds chirping above me, so hopefully we catch a lot to show you.
Excellent. All right. Well, I can see you're at the hut where all the action takes place.
Yes.
Those who are tuning in via YouTube or Facebook wouldn't have noticed, but the team kind of just went out on a mist-net run. So, Leah, why don't you set the stage for us? Tell us what they're up to and what we're hopefully going to see.
Yeah, sure. So we are a long-term research project here studying fall migration of all types of birds. So we run for 24 hours. In the morning now, you'll get to join us for songbirds. In the afternoon, we study diurnal raptors, so things like those big hawks flying around in the daytime. And then at night, we're catching and banding owls. So we do it all here, and it's really exciting. So for songbird banding, what the other scientists are out doing now, we set up these very long, thin nets so the birds can't see them when they're flying fast through the forest. They will run into them and kind of hit them and hang in a little pocket, kind of like they're just hanging out in a hammock. And so they wait for us to go extract them from the nets, and then we bring them back here to the banding yurt where all the magic happens, like Joe said. We put a small aluminum USGS band on them that has an individual ID number so that if we catch them again, we can see how they're doing. And if someone else catches them, they can tell us, hey, I know your bird was banded in Boise, Idaho. We found it in northern Mexico, for example. So that's pretty cool. Before the scientists get back and we really get into things, I just want to tell you a little bit more about why Lucky Peak is such a good place to study migration. So for songbirds in particular, we've got a lot of really cool habitat here, and I'm actually going to turn the camera around so you can see it for yourself. And so Lucky Peak is what's known as a stopover site. And that's kind of just like a place where birds can take a pit stop on their long journey south for the winter. So you can see our tents here too. We live up here for the season. And we've got this really unique mix of habitat up at this higher elevation where we've got conifers, we've got a lot of these bushy shrubs that are green and starting to turn red there. And they have a lot of berries on them that birds can eat. And then you can sort of see that mixed in with this shrubbery is some grass. And so the grass seeds and the seeds from the conifer trees can all be food that birds will eat. So we've got a bunch of different types of birds that will come stop here, take a rest, fuel up on some berries, bugs, or seeds, and then continue on south on their migration journey. So Sam's coming back here with a few birds. So we'll go check that out in a sec. And So another thing I think we should think about today, while we've got these birds up close and personal, is that to eat all of those different types of food that Lucky Peak has available, each bird, you can tell what species it is, sort of based on what its beak shape is, and you can also tell what it eats based on what its beak shape looks like. So when we get the birds from the mist nets, we bring them back in these little cloth bags. And so, number one, it helps us be able to handle multiple birds at a time. Sam could never have brought back all these birds with just his hands. But it also helps make them feel safe and secure on their way from the nets to the yurt. It helps them be less scared that they're moving and going somewhere that they weren't really planning on going. So, as they start putting bands on these birds, I'll show you one of them. And so this is one of our larger bands that we use for songbirds. They have a 9-digit number on them. You can kind of see that there. So every bird gets a little bracelet like this. They're very light and they're made to fit the bird's leg perfectly. And like I said, it's a little identification number, and every bird has a unique number. So, Sam, what do you have there?
I've got a light-crowned sparrow. They take a band size 1B.
All right, and let's get in close there. So that bird has a triangular, sort of thick beak. Anyone in the audience, you can maybe shout out if it's okay with your teacher, or just think inside your head what you think that bird might eat. You can go ahead and band.
Right.
So with that stronger bill, that bird is a sparrow, and like many other sparrows, they often are eating things like seeds. Right here, where we've got a lot of berries, the white-crowned sparrows we often see with a bunch of berry juice on their faces. So they can eat more than just seeds, but that's generally what that bill shape is for. And awesome, we've got 2 different types of birds here. So Lauren, what do you have?
This is a ruby-crowned kinglet. It's a very small songbird, and as you can see, their bill is a very different shape than a sparrow's bill. Fly up into the air from the perch, grab an insect flying around in the air, or they glean them from a branch. So if they see a spider crawling on a branch on a tree, they also will eat those.
So after we put the bands on the birds, we take a lot of other measurements. Right now you can see Lauren and Sam taking the wing and tail measurement of the bird. This could potentially help us figure out what whether the bird is a boy or a girl based on its size. Generally in songbirds, the boys are bigger, and now they are able to write down all of this really important data. So I'll give you an example of what information that we take. So their initials will go here. The band number that they put on the bird will go there so that we can know who is who. We have the species. We can look at the bird and determine its age and sex. We look at a lot of stuff on the bird's body. Most importantly for this migration stopover site are fat and muscle. So if the bird has a lot of fat and a lot of muscle, we can tell that it's migrating. And having a lot of fat is a good thing because that's all that energy that they've filled up in their little gas tanks, and it helps them be able to continue migrating further south. their wing and tail, like we just saw the scientists taking, and then we weigh them. And so it's pretty funny. We'll be able to show you how we weigh them, but we put them in these little tubes and we put them upside down, and they've never been upside down in their life before. So they get really confused, and in that second it takes before they realize what's happening, we've already got their weight and we're already taking them out of the can. So while we're in here and while these scientists are continuing to take some data, let's explore our scientific instruments a little bit more. So I showed you a band already, and we got a couple different sizes based on the different sizes of birds that we catch. So some are bigger and some are smaller. And we have these special wing rollers that the bird's wrist, which is what looks like their shoulder, is actually their wrist. It fits there perfectly so we can get a good wing measurement. And then we've got these really specialized banding pliers. So we can open the band on this little post there. And then once the band is open, we can close it using these holes that are made to be the perfect size for each type of band. And those bands are the perfect size for each bird's leg. So everything is going on in a perfect fit. We want the birds to be really happy and unencumbered by these bands because they're going to wear them for the rest of their life. And so we want to make sure that everything is good for them. So you'll notice that maybe some of the scientists are blowing on the bird. Actually, Sam's about to weigh a bird, so let's watch him do that. So he'll just carefully put that bird in upside down into that can. And then get the weight and take the bird out. 23.7. So I would guess that that bird might have some fat to show us. Is that right, Sam?
Big bird.
So we like birds that are heavy because that means that they're healthy. And we definitely like a healthy bird.
Yeah, I found this guy to show.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll come outside. Sam can show us what the fat on a bird looks like. So birds, as you may know, need to work really hard on being light to fly. Even though they want to gain a lot of fat, everything else on their body is there to help them be as light as possible. So birds' skin is really thin, and so when Sam is blowing on the bird, we'll be able to see the fat inside of under its skin, and it'll look orange compared to the muscle of the bird, which will look pink. So whenever you're ready.
All right.
So it might be a little bit hard to see on your screens, but I can see a little bit of fat in the throat hollow there. And that's one of the first places that they store it. Does it have any in its belly? A little bit. So we'll see if we can show you an even fatter bird.
I have some fat in the furculum of this bird.
Okay.
So it's going to look very different because it's a much smaller bird.
Oh, yeah. This is a really good one. You can see the feathers are blowing away very well, and you can see that orange fat right in there. And then the bird's muscle is right here, that pink part. And you can see its little heart beating, too. Awesome. So this Ricky looks pretty fat. She looks like she's going to be ready to go travel on in migration soon.
Yeah.
And you can tell that she's a girl. They're called ruby crown kinglets. And so the males have a ruby crown that they use to impress the females during breeding season, and also scare away anyone that's threatening them. and the girls don't. But they want to be able to blend in with their nest. Are you ready to let it go?
I am.
Awesome. Good luck, little bird. All right.
See the jump?
Yeah. So here's another species that we catch here. These three birds are the most commonly caught ones at this time of year in fall. So this is a dark-eyed junco. Definitely a bird that I would bet everyone that's tuning in today can see. You can see that little band on its leg, able to spin around there. They won't even notice it, just like you wouldn't notice having a watch or a bracelet on after you've had it on for a while. Ooh, yes. So a good ID tip with these juncos is they have these white outer tail feathers. And so if you see something flying around on the ground and it has a white tail, good chances are that it's a junco. And we can see here what we call a growth bar. So as birds are in the nest, they're growing their tail and their wings, and it kind of depends on how fast they grow their tail with how much food parents are able to bring to them. And so you can see that maybe on this day when they were growing their tail, their parents weren't able to bring that much food. So it's starting to wear away faster, and that might be happening here as well. And let's look at the junco's beak before we let it go. So a junco is another type of sparrow, and so you can see its bill looks pretty similar to that white crowned sparrow from before, nice and thick and strong. And so juncos, again, are another bird that's probably eating, I'll let you guess, eating seeds. Yeah. All right, ready to let that one go? And right into the bushes so it can continue eating and continue fattening up. So we've got a pretty busy day here so far. You can see all those little bags are full of birds. We've got a lot of help today too.
Here I have a recap that we banded yesterday.
Ooh,
So,
awesome.
yeah, this guy had his band on from yesterday when we put it on him. So now we can recap him and weigh him again and check all fat and muscle and everything and see if anything's changed over the night.
Awesome, yeah.
Very important data for us.
And we're hoping that that bird was able to eat enough and stay warm enough last night that it didn't lose very much fat. We're hoping that it gained weight. We want it to be able to leave us soon if it wants to leave on migration. So Serena will weigh it again back there in a smaller cup this time because it's a smaller bird.
Well,
So 5.7 grams today.
Awesome.
Carly, could you look up the last three numbers 238 on the 0 way?
Yes. 238 was 5.6 last time. Awesome. So we caught this bird on 9/29. That was yesterday. Oops. And you can see all the information that we took on it. And now it gained 0.1 gram of fat, which may not seem like very much, but these little ruby crowned kinglets are one of the smallest birds that we catch. They normally weigh about an average of 6 grams, and so that's as much as 6 Skittles. So that's not a very big bird. So 0.1 gram even is maybe a big deal for that bird, making it more healthy and have more energy. Ready to go?
Yep.
All right. If you guys get a male, make sure you show us that ruby crown.
I have it right now.
Oh, awesome.
Did we get anything else that wasn't a white crown or junco or kinglet?
The
No.
5844.
Okay.
All right, Leah. Well, while we watch this science and conservation in action, which is pretty darn amazing. It's really cool to see how well the team is working and how quickly they're working with the birds. How about we meet some of the classes and get
That
some
sounds
questions
great.
going? Excellent, excellent. All right. Well, anyone tuning in via YouTube, feel free to introduce yourself, send us in some questions via the chat, and I'll make sure I work a few of those questions in. But for now, let's start meeting some of our live classrooms. So we're going to go to Mrs. Russett's grade 4-5s joining us from Arnprior. Let me bring them into the call. Here they come. Hey, boys and girls, how are you?
I was wondering, do you guys rescue any injured birds?
Well, we don't rescue them per se. So we're studying these wild birds, and we want to make sure that we release them as soon as we can so that they can get back to going on with their lives like normal. We do have injuries sometimes, so let's see. One of these bigger birds with really strong legs, like this white-crowned sparrow, sometimes in the net they kick a lot and maybe might injure themselves. We can do a little bit of basic first aid here so that we can help them feel better. It's like maybe they sprain their ankle and we give them an ace bandage to help them feel better so they can keep going. If a bird would get really injured, we might take it to a wildlife rehabber who has the skills to help that bird even more. But generally, we just have sort of small injuries like that, like a sprained ankle, or maybe if you had something like a scraped knee, something easy to fix. So we don't really rescue them, we just study them. Oh, and really quick, let me show you guys this ruby crown kinglet with a red ruby crown. So we know that this one is a male. And let's look at that insect eating beak again. Nice and pointy and thin. Awesome.
All right, very cool. I'm going to bring a family group into the call. We've got Kate and Mom joining us in Boise, Idaho. How are you doing this morning?
We're doing good, thanks.
What do you think of all the birds? Pretty cool?
Yeah, really cool, huh? You have a question?
All right, go ahead, Kate.
How do you know their age?
Ooh, that's a fantastic question. So we can tell their age in a few ways. So birds of different ages have different feather qualities. So imagine the difference between your baby teeth and your grown-up teeth. So your baby teeth aren't going to be in your mouth for very long. So they're not as nice as your adult teeth will be when they grow in. So we can tell the difference between birds' baby feathers and their adult feathers. Another way that we can age a bird, can you open this for me? This super cool thing about birds. So like I was saying before with their fat, their skin is so thin that we can see through it. If this can focus. So this is a specimen of an old bird. Let me see. Okay. So we can look through the bird's skin and at its skull. So you can see that sort of triangular shape coming up from the bottom and going up in a line. Just like a human baby, when a bird is born, its skull isn't fully formed. So it's born with one layer. And as they're growing, they start to grow another layer of skull. And so we can see that coming in here in that little triangle shape. So here is a grown-up bird, a different type of grown-up bird, but you can see the difference in what their skulls look like. And so that's another way that we can age birds. That was a really good question. And it's something that takes a lot of training because it can be really hard sometimes.
All right, great question. Let's bring another classroom in here with us. Let me unmute that microphone. This time we're joining Miss Telio's class. They are joining us from Woodbridge. Looks like a grade 5-6 classroom. Are we doing grade 5, 6s?
Hi
Hi.
guys.
All right, who's got a question?
I'm Nathan. What's the rarest bird you guys ever caught?
Ooh. Well, I don't know about ever caught. This year, though, the most exciting bird and the most rare bird that we caught was called a black and white warbler. So this bird, if you live on the East Coast, it's not a very rare bird to you probably. They're an eastern warbler, and so they don't normally come out this far west. Maybe this bird was blown in on a storm, or maybe it just got confused about where it was and somehow ended up here in Idaho on migration. So you can maybe Google what a black and white warbler looks like. Um, Actually, I have a picture of its face, but it kind of looks like a zebra. So it's not particularly rare in general, but it is rare in Idaho. So here's the black and white warbler. And its body is just really stripy and looks like a zebra. It's black and white. So that was our rarest bird that we've caught this year.
Okay, well, we're going to grab a question here from YouTube. This is from Jessica. And Jessica is asking a few more questions about, telling a male and female bird apart. So if you have a species like a chickadee, they look so similar, the male and the female. Are there some other tricks for telling them apart?
Yeah. So for birds that look alike, we can pretty much only age them during breeding season. And so during breeding season, they have different body conditions that help them breed. So I'm going to try and find a picture of it in our book. This is the Pile Guide to North American Birds, and it is like the bird bander's Bible. It helps us age and sex all of these birds. So one thing that girl birds get is called a breeding on their eggs. They lose all of the feathers on their belly, and here's a picture of it. They lose all of the feathers on their belly, and they get sort of what looks like a blister that forms. And so when you have a blister, it's really hot. And that fluid-filled hot spot on their belly helps keep the eggs warm. So that's one way that we can tell if a bird is a girl during some parts of the year. And for some other species, we may be able to tell with their wing or tail length, and that's why we take really careful measurements on those. But sometimes we just have to say that we don't know, and that's okay.
All right. Well, let's take another swing through some of our live classrooms and grab some follow-up questions. So let's go back to Mrs. Rusted's group, see if they have another question for us. I like your orange shirts today for Orange Shirt Day. Very cool.
Thank you.
How many birds would you catch in a day? Like usually?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it depends kind of on the year, and it depends on the weather. So last year, and we think it's because the spring was really rainy out here and really cold in the west, we didn't catch very many birds, and that might be because not many birds were being born. But this year, it seems like we're having a really good year. The birds have been having lots of babies. This year, our average day is probably about 100 birds. So imagine 100 of those little bags there all day long. And judging by our first net run, I think we might have a day that's higher than 100 birds. So we'll be really busy for the rest of the day after we leave you guys.
Very cool. And just to build on that, Leah, what would you say the recatch rate is for catching one maybe banded a day or two earlier?
Yeah, I don't have a specific specific number for you, but it's definitely more likely for us to catch a bird that we've just recently banded, like that one that Serena had earlier that we had caught yesterday. And that's a really important part of our research here. We found out that this was a good stopover site for these birds because we could see through recapture data that they were getting fatter as they stayed here. We also learned that birds are generally staying at stopover sites on migration for maybe an average of like 6 days, but not much more than that. If they even stay up to 6 days at all, they might stay less. So we catch birds after a few days quite often. Sometimes we catch birds, especially during breeding season, from year to year. So they're the same birds that are coming back here and having babies year after year. So that's really fun too, to say, oh my gosh, I banded that bird 3 years ago and it's still alive. And that's just really cool to see.
All right, that is very cool. Kate and Mom hanging out with us in Boise. Let's bring you back in. Do you have another question for us?
I have two questions. Do you ever catch hummingbirds? And can we put a band on the bird on a bird?
Oh my goodness, yes. I can't believe I forgot to show you that. The next bird we band, I'll make sure that we can see it happening up close and personal. And we do catch hummingbirds. I'll walk over to our board that has all of our totals for the year. So, where is the hummingbird? This year we caught 58 calliope hummingbirds. And you might be able to see before I do 16 black-chin hummingbirds. And for you guys who are living in Boise, you're lucky. Typically, we have this station open to visitors, so you could come up and watch us do this in real life. And we also have a hummingbird station that you could come see. This year, because of COVID, we're closed to visitors to keep our scientists safe and to keep the public safe. But you should totally check that out. You guys, or really anyone following who wants to learn more about birds and maybe join us on some other virtual banding demonstrations, can follow us on Facebook at Intermountain Bird Observatory and check that out. So Sam has a ruby crown kinglet here, and he's gonna carefully open that band with our specialized pliers that we really like to close. These pliers help us close the band perfectly. So you can see it in there. And Sam will grab its leg and hold it by the joint, which is a safe place to hold it. And then just squeeze that band shut over the leg. And the pliers don't touch the leg. The band kind of doesn't really touch the leg all that much. And we're going to make sure that we have a perfect fit there. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. I forgot to show you guys that. And then he'll just measure the wing and tail.
All right, very cool, Kate. Thanks for those great questions. We're going to head back to Mrs. Tilio's class. We'll see if they have another question for us.
Hi, my name is Vanessa, and thank you guys for all the work you guys done. And my question is, with all the information that you guys are documenting, what do you do with this information to help the birds?
All right, that's a really good question too. So what we do with this information, so actually every scientist that bands birds, they submit their information to the United States Geological Survey. And so that's public information that you can go ahead and look up if you wanted to. Unless you're a scientist, I don't know what use you would have for that, but maybe pretty cool to see. So anyone in the world can access our data and they can figure something out if they have a question. But generally what we do is we're looking at bird populations. We're looking at how populations might change over time, or maybe how changing over time. So we've been doing this project since 1997, the Songbird banding. So we've got 20 something years of data. And that's really what's helping us be able to figure things out and hopefully make a difference for these birds if we see a problem starting to arise. So we can say, this species seems to be declining over the last 20 years. Maybe there's something wrong in their breeding habitat. Maybe it's something that's happening on their wintering grounds. So it'll help lead us into a direction that will help us make a change for the birds, hopefully.
All right, very cool. Another great question. I know Heather's tuning in today. Heather, use the chat if you want us to visit you for a question, or if you're just hanging out with us today. I want to make sure we work a question in if you're hoping to join us. And then we have one more classroom to visit. We have a classroom joining us from Winnipeg, Manitoba. Let me bring them into the call here. Go ahead and unmute for me, Winnipeg. And I'd love to grab a question if you have one about the banding.
Okay, so hello.
Hey, everyone.
Are we on? We just have one.
Yeah, we got you.
We have a question about injured birds. So Noah from grade 5-6 at Sergeant Park is asking about the injuries that birds, when they happen, how do you document that, and how does it help scientists, I guess, predict the trends or know if the bird is in trouble or the species is in trouble?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, like I was saying before, sometimes injuries do happen while we're studying the birds. Evan needs more bags at 8 if anyone can go. So sometimes injuries happen when we're catching the birds, but we've also actually helped publish some data that shows that even when a bird is injured, we can recapture it. Here's our recapture data sheet. And it'll be healthy. So most of the injuries that we see are something like a sprained ankle. And so we can kind of splint that up and let the bird go, and then likely catch it in a few days, and it'll be doing much better. Here's a bird that we was wrong with it, and so we can see that means illness. And so this bird had what was called avian pox, and that's sort of like it gives you like warts if you're a bird, and kind of makes you sick, and it's easily spreadable to other birds, but it's a pretty common disease that we see on birds. I know that other scientists, not here at our station, but other scientists can take even more information about the health of the birds by maybe taking a blood sample, and they can see, I know people study lead in the birds. I know people study how malaria affects birds. In the hand, I can show you guys really quick. Show its little yellow butt. So some birders call them butterbutts, and you can see why. And let's look at its beak. So Audubon's warblers are probably eating mostly insects, so they have another one of those sort of skinny bills. And Serena has a hermit thrush. So this is related to a robin that you probably see in your yard a lot. They have really pretty songs. And this is another insect eat because it's a bigger bird, but still kind of the same shape that tells you what it's eating. Awesome. Any other questions or any questions about these birds?
Yeah, so a quick question for you, Leah. I don't know if it's possible. We have a couple kids tuning in with Allison on YouTube, and they're wondering, are the mist nets far away? Would we be able to maybe wrap up by checking one out before we sign out today, or are they too far away?
You can definitely head over and see one. So we'll go ahead and walk, and I'll maybe change you over to myself for a second.
Perfect. While you do that, I'm going to pop Heather into the call for a minute. I see Heather turned on her camera. How you doing today, Heather? Oh, can you unmute for me, Heather?
How are
There we
you?
go. I'm good, Heather. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Hi,
Well,
Heather.
Hey, Leah.
we've had a great couple of events. I think we had 5 raptors a couple days ago, which was pretty
Yeah.
cool, and it's been a string of songbirds this morning, which is awesome.
It's been fantastic. They've been having a great year up there so far.
Very, very cool. Well, do you want to put Leah on the spot? Do you have a question for her, or are you just observing from the background?
Let's see. Well, instead of a question, let's ask Leah about her background and what brought her to Lucky Peak.
Oh, okay. So actually, as a kid, I didn't have much experience being in nature or thinking about being a scientist. And then in high school, I took an environmental science course. And then I was like, oh, this is what I need to do. I can't work in an office. I've got to be outside. Then I sort of found myself getting into birds, and I thought that they were really cool. And then I applied for a job with IVO doing point counts, where I was just listening for bird songs to monitor populations. And then I got here. I got hired at their banding station, and this is my 3rd year here, my 2nd year as crew lead. I'm here at a net now, so that was a perfect amount of time for me to talk about myself before we get here to our technicians who are extracting birds from this net. So you can see that we have them set up in this really brushy area where we know that birds are going to be traveling because they want to be eating, hopefully you can see, all of these little berries and all of the bugs that are on these trees. So the nets you can barely see on the screen here, and that's the point. So they're really fine mesh material, and really soft. So when a bird flies through this little corridor, they hit the net and then fall into this little pocket like a hammock.
All right, very cool. Well, I want to give our class in Winnipeg a chance for a second question, so I'm going to pop them in one more time here.
Oh, okay. So we actually sent a couple questions, Joe. One relating to whether the birds sometimes remove the bands. Are they able to do that? And second question, whether birds ever laugh out when they're being banned.
I'm not sure I heard the last.
The second part was, the birds look relatively calm so far, but do they ever kind of put up a fight?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, for songbirds, they typically aren't going to be able to remove those bands once they're on. We put them on so that there are no gaps, so that it's safe for the bird, so that when it's flying through the forest or whatever, it doesn't get caught on anything. And it's probably unlikely that their bills are I guess, sharp enough to really do any damage to that aluminum. I know that there are some species of birds that are able to take their bands off, and those are bigger birds, like maybe some raptors, or I don't know, some larger sort of shore or water birds. And then, sorry, we just went up a hill. So some birds definitely have their own personality, and some birds and some different species that we capture here are a little more feisty than others. Some species, a lot of our warblers, for example, are really calm in the hand. Other species are a little more tough. Maybe instead of playing possum like our warblers might be doing, they're trying to fight. So Cassin's vireos are one of our favorite feisty birds that we catch here, and they will clack their bill at you and try and bite you, which doesn't really hurt because they have tiny bills compared to our hands. So some birds, they weren't planning on being caught. They might think that we're a predator and not understand that what we're doing is to try and help keep them safe. So some get a little feisty, but usually songbirds aren't able to remove their bands.
All right. Well, Leah, a huge thank you for heading out to the mist nets. It was really neat to see, that kind of earlier step where you're able to grab the birds. Very cool. I want to give a huge shout out to the groups who tuned in via YouTube today. Thank you for sending us such great questions. A shout out to our camera classrooms and families. Thank you so much for joining us with the great questions. And then just a reminder that we have 2 more trips to Lucky Peak coming up. So I believe October 5th at 2 p.m. We're going to try our luck with some raptors again up on the hilltop. And then during our World Migratory Bird Day celebrations on October 13th at 10 o'clock Eastern, we will visit the songbirds again. Leah, thank you so much. That was awesome. And I'm excited that it looks like you're having another big day, 100+ birds. That's great.
Yeah, so are we. Awesome. Thank you, scientists, and thank you again to everyone who tuned in, and thanks for having us exploring by
a massive thank you to the whole team. Yeah, thank you, Heather, for helping to set these events up as well. And we can't wait for the 5th, and hopefully we get lucky and strike some raptors again. That was tons of fun. So thanks again, everybody, scientists and crew, and we look forward to our next virtual field trip to Lucky Peak. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye.